one.
Okay.
Welcome. Okay, so we're in virtual studio with Kate and Adam on Epic and Epiphenomenal. So this is where things get a little bit mental and always epic. So here we are, and I think the best place to start here is on happiness. So let's jump right into it, guys. What about happiness in the workplace? How do you promote it, cultivate it? What exactly does it mean?
Ooh, this is a juicy one.
That's a great question, Dan. Yeah, it's juicy. And that's hard because it's an individualistic thing that you're trying to apply across like a multi-person platform. And so I think you need to be multifaceted when designing when trying to build happiness in the workplace, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think,
Adam, would you agree?
yeah, for me, I would start with this notion that, sometimes people have this notion that happiness is kind of beyond the cognitive horizon, right? I will work hard, then I'll go on the vacation, then I'll be happy. I will do this, then I can accomplish that, then I'll be happy, right? And research and understanding has shown that it's actually the reverse. If you just be happy, you will attract the right types of people, and that will lead to your success, right? And I think in an organization, how that is communicated is key, especially when things are rough, like if there's a layoff situation or something. That's immediately where my mind goes. What do you think, Dan?
What you guys are onto something, and I think we need to nurture this a little bit. It's been a while as an entrepreneur since I've been in a large group, continual sort of company grind. The goal is to have some cooperation, foster cooperation, have a good working atmosphere, all while hitting all of your deadlines and hitting all of the profit goals of the company. But your organization is that you spend more time with these people than you do your significant other, right? I mean, you kind of see each other in passing, but I spend 8 to 10 hours a day with the girl in the cubicle across or down the hall from my office, right? So or on the pit floor or wherever that workplace happens to be, and that's a tremendous amount of, wow, let's fill in the next blank. Is that potential? Is that oppression? Is this like, how does this work the potential for so much in terms of like rich, human interaction?
Yeah, that's it's so true. You're so right. Like we spend so much time with the people in our office. Well, in our offices and now over Zoom, right? We do. We spend so much time interacting with these individuals, and I mean, companies do lots of things, but they all just kind of seem sporadic, right? Like individual points of like, here, let's all rally and connect, right? But it doesn't seem to be like an overall strategy. Do you know what I mean? Like they might do a team building event, or they might do, okay, we're gonna actually get leadership training or like management training to help build this culture. We're going to do something to, define our culture, but it's all like an individual piece, not a whole like built together integrated strategy around that. And the fact of the matter is like somebody who's happy and loves what they're doing and like loves coming to work is so much more engaged. They'll go the extra mile, right? So you're looking at like huge profitability because they'll be way more productive. Right? They're not looking like, oh, I gotta go to work again, dragging their butt in half an hour late. They like can't wait to get there, right? They can't wait to interact with the people. And so like, I mean, there's the people interaction and then what they're doing, but I can guarantee you talk to most people, they leave. In fact, I saw a poll on LinkedIn the other day. They leave because of toxic teams. Be it their boss, be it the team, be it whatever. That's why the greatest percentage of people leave a company.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I would just say that there was a quote that Adam sent to me, or maybe it was actually just some words of wisdom from Adam. It says cooperation isn't just something taken for granted value or goal. It's a complex social process, hard to create and easy to destroy. And I was like, that's so true. We're effectively a social species, and we have to foster this sort of, you know, altruistic behavior and encourage cooperation. So I think that's the foundation. Those are your first principles.
and we always,
Yeah, absolutely.
when we when we talk to companies and we kind of give them advice on this kind of stuff, like, okay, like if you define your culture, or if you ask for people's opinion, if you go out and you say, okay, team, how can we make it better? What do you guys want to see? Blah, blah, blah. But we warn them, don't start if you're not going to finish. You have a lot of trust to be gained here, like over time. It'd be really great for you, but you can lose it in a second if you ask that question and they answer and then you do nothing with it, or you're off to a different priority or whatever. So be very careful about the timing and your willingness to follow through on that, because it can go sideways on you really quick, right?
Yeah.
Do you have an example? Like if I were to say, if you're interviewing me and a part of a large corporation, and I think, well, it would be really great if we had weekly picnics, and then you'd be, aha, so Daniel's going to be in charge of the picnic committee. Is this kind of how? I mean, I'm mocking it a bit, but
yeah.
Is this kind of the idea, right?
Yeah, I think when you ask for someone's opinion, the first time it's usually excitement. They give it to you for free. They love to hear it, right? Usually we find is that, like, we'll go in and interview people in organizations, and we plan for half an hour discussions, and some people are there for like 2 hours yapping. Like, wow, no one's ever asked them their opinion, and here we are. So, but that's the first time. Okay, if you take that input and then you do nothing, and then maybe 6 months you're like, this is the infamous like feedback survey, right? If you ask them the second time, depending on the person, they might give it to you again, thinking, oh, okay, like, but definitely by the third time, you're not getting anything. And you're like, yeah, they'll shrug, they'll kind of say, yeah, it's fine. Like, you kind of have to show them that their opinion matters, and if you don't, you're telling them that, like, actually, we wanted to ask you so that we could say that we did, but we don't actually care. So that's, it might not be your intent to start with, but that's what your action showed, right? So.
And I think that really comes back to, we talked about this, we touched on it briefly in one of our more generic episodes that we were kind of dancing about all the potential topics, but we touched a bit on transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And like, that's part of it. That's part of happiness, is like, hey, Adam, you had a great idea. We heard you, right? We might not do it at this time, and here's why, right? And so giving the transparency. So like, if you can't execute every good idea, they're all good ideas. You've got to pick what's a great idea that's going to have the most impact, most bang for your buck as a company, right? Otherwise, you'd be spending all of your time trying to do these little individual things, right? So you pick what's the most powerful item to focus on that's going to have the most impact. But you got to tell people, hey, we heard you. Thank you for giving us. We evaluated all of the options, and here's the top ones that we came up with. Like, engage your people that way. So it's like, yeah, okay, they heard me. Mine didn't make it. That's okay. Maybe next year, right? Like, it's about communicating those ideas and transparency. But the concept, I just want to back up a second, because the concept that Adam's talking about, like be happy first, it's a state, and then things will come to you. Like, there's a great book called The Happiness Advantage. I think it's by like Sean Acker, or Achor is his last name. But it's this whole concept, and it's scientifically proven that you choose to be happy, and then the things that you want in life and the things that you're going towards will come to you. The right opportunities will come to you. And it actually is the reverse of trying to achieve happiness.
Dude, there's
right? Which is a really interesting concept.
There's a study in that
Go
book.
ahead, Adam.
There's a study in that book where they took a bunch of information. People like filled out a bunch of information of obviously the simple stuff like their name and their race and their family, but also like what's going on in their lives, how's their job, how's their personal life, how's their parents, how's their sisters, how are their relationships, like all this information, and then gave it to other people who they've never met and said, rate this person's level of happiness on a scale of 1 to 5 or whatever the scale was. And the results were like 8% or something, like incredibly low. So they're saying it doesn't matter if you know everything about me. Like I could tell you that I'm a billionaire. I just bought an island. That's my favorite yacht or this, whatever. You might guess I'm super happy and I might be miserable. So it's entirely your own perception of what you have, and that we can't communicate to someone. So, look inward first is kind of the lesson behind that. I thought that was super cool that they like proved that.
I love that. And we see that every day on social media. You like look through the newsfeed, you're like, man, that person has got it going on. They must be so happy, right? And meanwhile, like they only post the good stuff. Right? Meanwhile, they're getting a divorce or, got fired from their job. Like, but you see them like living the dream out on a hike or whatever. You're like, wow, it's all going well. And it's really interesting. Our little like personas that we have even online, right? Because that kind of is denying ourselves who we are as well, right? For not accepting all of ourselves. So it's interesting. It's such an interesting topic, this happiness thing.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think Adam was onto something when, at least that study was really onto something. I'm thinking about it for a minute, and I'm thinking it's like studies in pain when they put you in the hospital and they say, okay, you guys so we got Kate and we got Adam. They're in a hospital bed, and I'm the doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've got this funny hat on, right? So I'm coming up here, and I don't look like a doctor because look at the kind of clothes I'm wearing. But anyways, we'll just pretend, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm in there, and I come up to your bed, Kate, and I go, well, Kate, you just had such and such a surgery, and so did this other fellow by the name of Adam. Kate, I want you to tell me what kind of pain you're experiencing here. And the scale, it's just like the 0 to 10 sort of scale, right? And so it's like, yeah. So Kate, what is your pain threshold, right? Or what pain are you experiencing? And you say, oh, it's a 4.
2.
Or 2, a 2, right? So here's the interesting thing. It's totally subjective, but it's also relational because Adam's in the same room. He's listening to you, and he's like, Doc, when he comes around, I'm going to be like an 8 or 9, right? This is just horrific. I can't handle this sort of thing. But you guys had the same operation, right? So he hears that you say a 2, and he's like, damn, man up, right? So I'm not, no, I'm a 2. But one second before you said that you're a 2, he was like an 8 or 9. He's like, no, this is horrible. I can't barely bear it, right? This is like the worst thing I've ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
That experience actually happened to me. So I was riding my motorcycle back in Ontario, and I went around a corner and they hadn't swept the roads yet, so it was all sand on the edge of the road, and the bike slid out, right? And so I get up and I pick up my bike and I look down and I'm like, oh shoot, like my knee is, I can see my kneecap and there's blood.
Oh God.
That you need to wear pigtails all the time. Okay, so I'm like, all right guys, I'm sorry, I probably have to go to the hospital. So I go to the hospital and they're triaging me in, right? And they're like, okay, sit down, and they're asking me that exact question, the pain, and I'm like, yeah, it hurts, right? And the nurse starts laughing, and I said, what? And she goes, see that guy over there? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, he just did the same thing. He's got pretty much the same injury you do. He's like hooked up to IV morphine, like has been like wailing this entire time. And I'm like, okay. But it's the same concept. concept, right? So yeah, I saw that exact thing happen. Like I wasn't bothered by the pain. He like it was next level for this guy, right? So it's happiness is that it is all perception. So now you're trying to engineer a individual perception through company processes.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You guys went for a very complicated, situation. You guys felt like consulting in that area? What's the matter with you guys?
Well,
this whole like subjectivity. It's like, yes, we're gonna go and do that.
If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? And I think therein lies the crux of this type of stuff, right? There is no one solution. We can't just walk into a company or an organization and start prescribing like our process. Like it's largely intuitive. You got to kind of talk to people, listen for things like passive aggressiveness, listen for frustrations, like islands of misery, right? Key influencers, who's going on in there, like like map out influence, who's right. If we want these people to behave in a certain way, then we need to get that person first because they'll do what that person does, right? Who are the early adopters, right? And then once we have them, will the rest fall in line? And then who are the people that will never convince, they'll just be miserable and don't bother, right? It's largely has to be intuitive. Like, I'll give you an example. This one company, it was an acquisition, and the new owners were starting to come into the office. So there were new people, like way more new people than the company that was acquired was used to. And people didn't know each other's names because, over in this corner is accounting and over here is, that department and that department. They didn't necessarily work together on the same projects on a daily basis. So there was a lot of passing in the hallways of people not knowing what their name was. So we said, let's put name tags on the offices. Like, this would help a lot. It's pretty simple. You'd think someone would have thought of it. And then we were printing the name tags, and just like as a last minute thing, I was like, Google the meaning of the name and put it underneath, and just put the first name, don't put the last name. And because that's more personal, right? If you say Dan versus Dan Peterson, right? So like last minute, switched it up, put it all on there, and like the conversation that came out of that like exploded. It was amazing. But such a little intuitive idea to open a window into someone's world and invite someone else in such a small way. It changed everything. But there's no way I could have engineered that beforehand. Right?
So you had to be immersed in it, and it almost just became epiphenomenal. It just kind of like appeared out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Epic.
There you go. That's right.
Well, it's the strategy around culture too, right? Like it kind of ties into that, like the strategy of culture. And I think that's so important. And like, there's so much around like the environment and the ergonomics in which your office is set up that you don't necessarily have control over that really can, like Adam said, they're all offices, right? And so it wasn't like a open workspace, right? You hear some companies that you come in and you pick your workspace that day, right? So you might be sitting beside somebody new each time, and there's no walls and there's no barriers, right? There's an office that they lowered the cubicle wall by a foot so you could actually look over and talk to somebody, versus before when you stood up you would never see anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that had a huge impact in the amount of interaction that happened and the connection. Like, we love connection. We're human beings, right? We love connection. You got introverts, but still time and space, they like connecting with people at for little periods of time and stuff, right? But there's whole setups that you can change in your office that help build culture, connection. Like, if you can't change your office, change the game like Adam did with the name tags, right?
Another great example is an office where Caitlin and I met. There was the lobby, and then you could go in two directions, and there were two hallways that then went into the main like cubicle farm, right? And just the way it was set up, which made perfect sense, I think, from the perspective of people that generally work together. If you went to the left, that was where all the senior like executives were. It was like bang, 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 bang. There was like 8 of them in those offices. If you went to the right, it was, I think, the printer room, some random closet, and then it was everyone else. So when you came into the building, all the leadership went this way, everyone else went that way. And one time, for whatever reason, I had to go through the executive hallway, and I came out the other end, and people like stopped me in the hallway, like, Adam, what were you doing in there? Like, were you in a meeting with them? I'm like, oh yeah, I just had to ask him this, blah, blah, blah. But it automatically created like a crystal palace of sorts. That kind of hindered that integration just without even thinking about it, right? So you never know.
So I'm the guy working there, and I say, Adam, this is really great. I'm so glad that you guys got hired by this company. Yeah. Here's my idea. What I think we should do is every time someone comes into the office, they should put a blindfold on, and we should spin them around 100 times, and then have them choose where they want to work. Right? And then we'll videotape it and put it on YouTube and watch how that thing you used to do to little kids, where I used to do it as a little. You put the thing on, you spin them all around, you let them run around, and then they bounce off the walls and stuff like that.
Honestly, yeah,
why not?
It would be amazing. I love social experiments.
The advisor would say no.
Probably not. There's pokey things, there's needles and stuff around. They're not really, that doesn't really fit their culture too much, does it?
No, probably, yeah. Safety would have an issue with that one. But just shaking it up. It's a series of little things, because the name thing might not have resonated with 100% of the people. So maybe it's like the culture cultivator group, or whatever you call them, social committee or whatever, that resonates with somebody. Or maybe it's the what a company does to help support local charities that really resonates with somebody. It's not a single one solution. It's a strategy across the piece, right? Because you're talking about individuals, and so you've got to have something for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing in a philosophical standpoint. I've been thinking about this idea of culture, but specifically, I've been spending some time on identity and what identity actually means to culture. And so, from this standpoint, you can appreciate this: that there's a biological Kate and there's a biological Adam, which dies and is reborn constantly throughout your identified lifetime, right? You've heard this before, right? About the cells in your body die and this kind of thing.
Sure.
Now there's this continuation of something that spans through the child version of Adam all the way up to the adult version of Adam that will take you to the.
Sorry, I'm going to stop you there. Adam's still a child.
Okay. So he's just experiencing a whole lot of swelling, right? He's got this swelling factor going on, right? Yeah. Okay. But eventually the days are going to happen, and he's going to be a grandpa or something, right? Unless you're Benjamin Button, you just don't. The wine time seems to go the way of the elder, right?
Well, you touched on something there, right? Like, the happiest people are often the healthiest people, and they often live the longest, right? We were talking about happiness, right? The people that maintain that childlike wonder, right? The 50-year-old uncle that hangs out in the basement with the kids during family reunions and plays video games and chases them around and that kind of stuff. Like, those people, it's contagious, right? Everyone likes to be around them, right? They kind of they have like a social gravity to them or something like that, right? And I think it's important, whether it's a family or a business or whatever, to kind of know who those people are, and then now you can start being kind of smart about sticking them in the right places, right? That kind of thing.
Well, some people just have that élan vital, that just there's some sort of essence about them that is a fountain of mental youth and happiness. And I know my my father that passed away, he was kind of like that. He spent the last part of his years down in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, and we'd go and visit him. And he was so gregarious and had so many friends, and he was really open to what we wanted to do. So, have you guys vacationed before in Puerto Vallarta at all? Ever been to Mexico?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there's this place down there that's called the Zoo, and it's where all the young people hang out. The girls wear bikinis and they get shot with foam and all this kind of stuff, and shooting and all that, like drink shoots and stuff like that, right? Well, we as the young kids went down there, right? We were 20 some and dumb, right? And so we would go down there and try and get into trouble. And after we got rejected, after, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, then it starts to go downhill, and then we, whatever, just the way it works. Well, my father's sitting there, and, he doesn't want to go home. He would pull an all-nighter, that guy. He'd be talking to everybody and dancing and laughing and having great fun and everything, right? And so it's so contagious. And I'm like, I want that, right? Mm-hmm. I want that magnetic personality. And people are just drawn to that. You want to be around people like that. Whether it's in a workplace or whether it's in the the nightclub that you get dragged to,
Well, this is so interesting because, like, you're talking about, like, even so there's magnetic people who are, like, out there and, like, want to have all these people around them. There's still magnetic people that are, like, introverted, right? So I want to make sure we like happiness and that feeling. So you can have somebody who's quiet, calm, and introverted, but you feel comfortable around them and you feel joy when you're around them. And it's really interesting how much people emanate their state, right? Whether they're outgoing or not, whether they're an introvert or extrovert, you can feel it. And it was really interesting. What was it, back in 2016, Adam, when we were going through the recession, and the office we were working at, it got really bad, and you could feel it. Mm. And it was just like you walked in, and you could feel your energy drain, right? Or I worked on a really highly politically charged project that everybody was vying for position and for, getting their way and stuff like that. And it just, I've never before in my life been depressed. And I went to the doctor because I was having all these issues, and he's like, "You're depressed." And I said, "I have nothing to be depressed about." He's like, "Yeah, that's what a lot of depressed people say." And, I had to do something about it because it was the toxic work atmosphere. And individually sitting with somebody, you might have a good conversation. "Oh, what'd you do this weekend?" It was great. But you could feel the stress in the office, and it just, the second you walked in, just like it just drained you right out. It was a horrible experience.
Well, and I think when I think about experiences like that, in terms of culture and people and all that, you learn probably more from going through something like that on how to prevent it or at least interrupt it, temporarily, than had you always just worked for, things are all wonderful. And I think there's this idea of struggle that is tied to happiness, right? Some of the most optimistic, happy people I meet, you hear their story, and sometimes they're veterans or they've had maybe cancer or loved ones pass away. I'm like, oh my God, like, what did this person go through? And they're like the most optimistic person in the universe. And the answer is, well, because they had to. They coming out the other end, they had to either become that or let them to destroy them, right? And I think the second thing that goes with this, as human beings, we love struggle. Like, we read about so many celebrity CEOs and people that seemingly they did it, they were a success story and blah, blah, blah. And then once they kind of made it through that struggling part, then they lost their sense of purpose. Okay, I'm the boss now. Everyone just does the work. What do I do? Who am I now? You see that all the time, and then they're not happy again, right? So, we're kind of programmed to struggle, which is so funny. If you look at what's going on in the world right now, what is going to come out of this? The whole world had to struggle for over a year, right? And it's going to struggle a little bit longer. But do we come out the other end all, better? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's innovation that is undoubtedly going to come out of this. I think there's a lot of businesses that realized prior to the pandemic that a virtual work environment, I'm not painting it as a broad brushstroke that it's the end all be all. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that the canon of having to go into the workplace and the huge amount of possibly unnecessary commuting that was taking place, where companies are saying, I'm just not ready to, we're just not, we do this all the time. This is the way we do it. People come into the office. It's the way that it's the way we conduct things, right? Well, the agitation to the system really was COVID, and now we've kind of been pushed or thrown into this new kind of social milieu, and it's undoubtedly going to be different than it was prior to the pandemic. That's one thing that is for certain, and I think that's really interesting. And you guys brought up an interesting point, really, really interesting point, that a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of companies are having to reinvent themselves as a corporate entity, and with ongoing or future struggle, how are we going to approach this? Right. So, from out of the ashes emerges the phoenix kind of thing. Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And back to the workplace happiness piece is like, it's kind of the first, any company that's worried about their culture and the engagement of their employees, when times are tough, it's the first thing that goes, right? Like, times are tough. We can't have a social committee. Times are tough. We can't do that. We all need to be focused on making money. Like, we can't do these extravagant things. Well, and the fact of the matter is, I mean, they don't need to be extravagant, but you still need to care about your employees' engagement. And everybody working remotely has really had a hard time. While people gained upwards of an hour commute. I had 2 hours commute every day, back and forth to work. Everybody gained that time back in their lives, but a lot of what I'm hearing is that they're struggling, they're stressed out because they don't have the boundaries anymore, right? There is no mental break where you pop your head over the cubicle and talk to your neighbor and just kind of diffuse for a second. And so, they're alone, they're Zoom call after Zoom call, they're feeling that stress. But people are working longer and harder. And, plus the stress of everything happening with the pandemic on top of it, right? It has been even harder to social engineer happiness or build your culture during this time.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Adam, what do you think?
Honestly, with virtual calls, people will say, okay, we can't connect virtually or whatever. And we would say, well, first thing you should do is make sure everyone has their cameras on, right? No excuses. I can't tell you how many companies I go on calls and everyone has their cameras off. It's a call. And you kind of miss the point. What's actually really great at what I've found is that people get to see a window into my life. I've got my office now, but I was up in my kitchen before, and you'd see my kids go across or whatever, and I'd see on I'd say, hey, I've read that book. Tell me about that book, right? Or wow, you love board games. There's a shelf of 20 board games in your you kind of see a window into people's lives that was closed to you before. So in a way, we're connecting more intimately than we ever have. So I think it's important to kind of see those strings and see can you pull on that a little bit, right? I noticed 2 people had pictures of the same mountain in Canmore. Maybe as a company we should try and go on an outdoor outing or hike or something. I don't know, whatever, right? There's clues,
for everybody from around the world listening to that, Canmore is a beautiful destination in Alberta.
There you go, right?
I know what you're talking about because I grew up in Calgary. You guys know what's going on.
It's true.
But you guys do. Hey, wait a minute. I have to ask you. Do you guys take clients outside of Alberta very often?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got a few in BC. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's super fun. But I think to Caitlin's point, what this has done is like kind of tipped our balance a little bit, right? People have like come up with an equilibrium in their lives, and it involves the commute and this and that, and then I do this, and it's like routine is how we function, right? And now, boom, you take away gyms, you take away social activities. Now I'm stuck at home. Now I've got 2 hours back. What am I going to do with that? I don't know. I'm going to eat junk food and feel terrible, or I'm going to binge Netflix, or I'm going to work out at home, or whatever. But it involves like actively changing your environment to try and offset this balance, right? It means you might have to create a little home gym. You might have to buy an exercise bike. You might have to, set a timer to get yourself up walking around every now and then. Like, without active intervention on your part, that equilibrium is just going to stay messed or off balance for you, and it's going to do crazy things to you.
So one thing that we do at our company, I'll share. And this is really interesting for me. So a while back, we said it's going to be your whole self Monday. So every day we meet with our entire team for 15 minutes. Okay? 15 minutes, half an hour. It's our touch point. It's how we get the day going. It's connecting as a team. And every day has a different topic, okay, or a different theme. Not to say we can't go off theme, but we just address the theme first, okay? And Mondays was whole self, mind, body, soul. And just recently, we would kind of like, hey, how's everybody doing? And everybody would be like, yeah, good. Yo, you have a good weekend? Yeah, it's good. Right, kind of thing. And then we said, okay, we got to restructure this a little bit. So we said, you need to tell us how you fed your mind, body, soul. Okay, and the first week we structured it like this. People didn't really, some would do, okay, this is my mind. They didn't really do anything for my body or soul. But now what happened is people were going into the weekend knowing that on Monday they had to report mind, body, soul, what they were doing. So they've actually started doing more things and consciously thinking about, hey, this is feeding my mind, my body, and my soul, right? So when they come on Monday, they're like, yep, I did this for my mind, this for my body, and this for my soul, right? And it's really powerful. And then we just added today, because one of our employees' wives, they're having a discussion about, I think he's feeling very frustrated. And so she pointed out that, look around you and be grateful, gratitude. And I said, I love it. We're doing a fire round of gratitude moment, go. And everybody had to give something they were grateful for. So we've incorporated that into our Mondays, mind, body, soul, what fed it, and what's your gratitude. And so it really kind of just has set the stage for feeling good. And after that conversation with our team, I'm like super jazzed to start the week, right? It's all good story kind of stuff. And that's something that we love, being able to just come up with these ideas and say, okay, going forward, we're doing it. That's the nice thing about being smaller, kind of boutique style, is that, you have less than 10 people, you can change like that. As soon as you get more than 10 people, it's a little harder. There's a little bit of change management you have to do going through, right? So it's to be a little more structured, but one of the things that we love doing.
That's a actually cool concept that, Caitlin. Let's say you have a company with 1,000 people, okay, pretty big, and you're like, I want to increase the overall level of happiness in my company. Go. What do you do?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, sure. Both of you. I'm curious, all the way in too. But
I have to give props to Kate on this, because what seems to be happening on the Friday is that it's pulling something through till the Monday. And it's like you are providing them with some happiness, some sustainable happiness through the weekend. Maybe it's related to purpose. It's not entirely I'm just trying to describe what that feeling is. But if they grab onto it and then they're excited about it on Monday and they get value through it, the value is in the anticipation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the thinking of creating and self-reflection, which, I mean, know thyself. This idea of the Socratic, starting point is to try and think about things more deeply and from a philosophical standpoint. So I think of course I'd be advocating for that.
Well, the other thing it does is I think it makes people, like, while they're doing the task, reflect that this is feeding the good parts of me, right? Instead of like just kind of going through the tasks of the weekend, or you're now like taking a stance and recognizing that this is good for you, right? Oh, I worked out. Oh, I can use this in my mind, body, soul moment on Monday, right? I'm doing good for me. And having that perception of like feeding yourself good energy and good things, I think is, it helps feed more, right? You're not just doing it because this is the to-do list you have for the weekend. You're doing it with real intent.
I like that. I like it because the idea is that you have, like, even working out. I mean, I wouldn't say that everybody has this philosophy about working out, but it becomes a habitual routine kind of thing. And when do you say, "Oh, that was so good. I went and had an amazing workout, and it was just so awesome." I mean, you don't have to be flowery with the language all the time, right? You don't have to be, but if you feel that, right, it does change your projection. It just changes your demeanor, right? Where it's like, how intense can you do a workout, right? How much intensity can you do in a workout if you're if it's abrasive to you, if it's like mentally abrasive, right? I mean, physically it's supposed to be abrasive, but mentally, if it's like you're anguishing in that in the precursors leading up to the thing.
Well, and there's a flavor for everybody, right? I mean, maybe you're someone who just likes going for walks. Maybe you're a runner. Maybe you like learning. Maybe you like, I don't know, martial arts or tennis, or like maybe you love the obstacle courses or something. Like, there is, if you're just talking about physical activity, there's a flavor for everybody. And then the same with mental activity. Like, maybe it's not like, maybe your hobby is like chess. Maybe that's like, you can just like, work your mind or whatever. I think, the people I know that love their hobbies or their physical activity or whatever, they've tried tons of stuff. They didn't just like pick it and win with it. They tried that, they did this, they did that, and then they eventually found not only activity that they were kind of good at, but also a culture, a community that they felt like they fit in as part of. We don't have that luxury of just bouncing around with our jobs, but like, I think that's a big part of it as well, right? Do you feel like, yeah, I would fit in with these people that also do this activity, right?
Right. Okay, guys. Well, I love this. I think the overall theme of this episode has really been one of happiness. I think this is, we've touched on a lot of points related to happiness, and so as we kind of wind down to the last 10 minutes or so, what about some summaries of approaching happiness in the workplace, and just re-emphasizing what and how you guys, even in your personal lives, how you guys approach happiness?
Am I frozen? Or is Kaylin frozen?
All I hear is cricket.
Adam, you want to start?
Sure. No, that's a great one. Honestly, I think gratitude is a great place to start. I did this gratitude challenge for a week, like a few months ago, and all you did was you woke up in the morning and you kind of just like on a piece of paper or even just mentally like list 2 or 3 things that you're thankful for. But it kind of sets a stage for an awesome day. And it's the same with like making your bed or whatever kind of little thing you do when you start the day that kind of sets the tone, right? For me, lots of times I'm like walking my dog, right? I got to kind of nice view where I'm living, and just taking a moment being like, okay, that's pretty cool. Now I'm ready, you know? So I think how you start has a lot to do with how you finish at the end of the day. How about you, Caitlin?
Yeah,
How do you start your day, Kate?
I get up extra early so I can get ready before the kids wake up. It's kind of just like a zoo at my place because my husband's already gone for work, so it's me and the kids. But you know, it's really interesting how you said it's about starting your day, because the other day I had a really hard day. My truck slid in the mud and crashed into a fence, so it was really like, and so I'm calling the claims person and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. It's just the truck's damaged, right?" And you know, she's like, "Well, you sound fairly chipper for somebody who just," I'm like, "Well, you got you got to move on, right? Like, you deal with this stuff." And so it really, but it took more effort for me to have that mindset. It definitely did. And it was hard not to just like let that ruin my day. Right. But I think it was the actively thinking, I'm not going to let this ruin my day. This one instance isn't my day. So being present for me is so important for achieving happiness, right? Not having it like, well, this happened and this happened and this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This morning I got out of the car and I spilt my coffee all down the front of myself. I haven't thought about it since. Just now this conversation happened. I didn't let it ruin my day, right? It was a moment, it's past, it's done. Now I'm in the present. And being present has been so critical to happiness, and everybody knows Eckhart Tolle, the power of now, and I think that's super important. And a while back, and I'll just tell you the story, I was feeling very, very upset about how much time I got to spend with my kids. And I mapped out 24 hours. And I said, okay, I have to be at work from this time to this time. That can't change. Takes me this long to commute. Okay, that can't change. All right, well, I have to get the kids ready for school and for bed, so those time frames are blocked out for those activities. And when I looked at it, I literally had like an hour and a half to just be with my kids. And I was super upset about it. And I was like, how do I give? Like, I feel like I'm missing stuff, right? And so I realized I can't change anything on that wheel, right? It's not like I can say, okay, work, I'm leaving 2 hours early every day, right? I couldn't change anything on the wheel, but what I could change was my presence. And so for that time, my phone went away and I was there and I was with them. And my happiness increased tenfold. The connection I had with my kids was even deeper, right? And so being present, I think really, really helped my personal happiness.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll play on a pun of sorts, but being present is a gift of sorts to you and your family.
Right.
Dad pun.
And I think there's a piece, you know, for me the trick to presence has to do with expectation. There's a quote I read in a book that really affected me. It was said, "It is not the flower that wilts that causes pain. It is the expectation that the flower does not wilt that causes pain." And when I read that, it just like, whoa, you know, because I'll use the example of getting kids ready in the morning. It's a struggle, right? You got to get them dressed, and like, you know, 3-year-olds don't move that fast. And by taking a moment, being like, okay, they're going to be a pain. They're kids. They're going to be kids. It changed everything. Now I can just kind of like be present versus being, you know, half an hour in the future because I got to get to work, which is where you are when you get frustrated when you can't get your kids moving, right? So flipping your expectation about what's going to happen here, for me, changed it big time. I'm not saying I always remember it.
Love that. Yeah.
You know?
I love that. I used to get my kids now, they're 16 and 13, but I was known as Daddy Tickle, right? So, you know, and I would, I never really punished them, right? I guess I you know, did a little bit, but you know, mostly they're really good kids. But I would tickle them, right? And they knew that, you know, so it was kind of like a game in a way, right? So I could kind of like mold their behavior based off of the threat of tickling, right? And so when I became this like scout leader, you know, I was a Beaver Scout leader. They were in that for a couple of years. And the kids that would come, and I was a Scout leader, I'd say I would tickle them, right? These little kids. And my kids didn't understand why you would go voluntarily to get tickled, right? Because they think... So I had that sort of scenario. And I remember what Kate was talking about, getting them ready for school. And I had this blanket that was, if we got this stuff ready, you got your teeth brushed and stuff, they'd have the blanket, and they would lay in the blanket, and I would just pick that up by the corners, and I would spin it around, right? Spin, and so they'd go on this like ride, this daddy ride sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. More, I want to go on, this type of thing, right? And so they were like, their whole demeanor always changed, right? And I never had a problem with them brushing their teeth or getting ready for school or anything like that, because they, I'd come out and I'd be the slow guy looking for my coffee or whatever. They'd be like all ready to go in the blanket, waiting for their turn, right? So,
that's amazing. There you go.
The thing is, you only have those memories of of your children, right? It's like, and here the wisdom is that it goes so fast. And you have those memories only, and then they only have those memories. And those memories will serve you and them into the future. So it's like, what's the choice? You're going to be, the tyrannical parent, or are you going to have fun with them and enjoy their presence as much as, and how do you do that? What you guys said, I think. You have to be present.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the same thing in a business. Are you going to be a boss or a leader?
Big difference, right? Yeah.
Big difference. And so I think that comes back to, workplace happiness. It ties it all in, is like, what's your perception? Are you going to be present? Like when you're as the owner or a leader in the company, when you walk down the hallway, is everybody ducking? Or is everybody popping their head up to say hi? A great indicator.
Right.
Right? So I mean, it's the same thing. It's like embracing that.
Someone told me the
words of wisdom, my friend Adam. You get the last kick at the can. What's the words of wisdom to finish off the episode?
Words of wisdom. If you want to gauge the level of happiness in your workplace, stop and listen for laughter. See if you hear it. It's the ultimate test.
Very good. Very good.
There you go.
Same thing with it. Or if you're remote on a Zoom call, the first 5 minutes before everybody's finally fully connected. Same thing.
There you go.
You guys heard it here first. Laughter is where it starts. Everything else is just minutia.
There you go.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Bye.